Brawlers, baby.
And here we go. All right. It's your boy, Rick Muhammad, Brawlers Sports Media in the building, and my associates at ThreeKingsBoxing.com. We are live here with the president of the WBC, Mr. Mauricio Sulaiman, and we are here today to discuss the 100 years of boxing, and then we'll finish up with our fight of the century and the 50th anniversary of Muhammad Ali and Smoking Joe Frazier. Mauricio, thank you for joining me. I know you're busy and everybody's pulling on you in every direction, so I appreciate you giving us some time at Brawlers Sports Media, buddy.
Thank you so much. It's for me an honor to be with Brawlers, and this is very exciting times for boxing. We have great things going, and even though it's been a challenging time for humanity, boxing is moving forward, and it's making the difference for the lives of many. So I'm very, very enthused.
Absolutely. You and me both. And I think a lot of our boxing fans are glad that boxing is back and on the way, and things are trying to get to some type of normalcy now with our new administration here. So what does 100 years of boxing really mean? You being the son of the late, great Jose Sulaiman and coming up in the boxing family like you have, what were some of your most touching moments that you would speak about in the whole 100 years, all the way from the 1900s, Mauricio?
Well, there's so many different things. Boxing is a great sport. One day you can be in the most exclusive, expensive suite in Las Vegas or London or New York, and next day you are in the humble, small town, very small card of boxing. One day you're with Muhammad Ali. Next day, you are with an amateur fighter or a four-rounder who's dreaming of becoming the next champion. So throughout boxing, I have been able to live great experiences. And I just feel so proud, and I feel so happy to be part of this sport, because the boxers are the best human beings that there are. They are hardworking, they sacrifice, they dream, they go through so much abuse in all aspects, and at the end, what you see in the ring is a demonstration of will and power and bravery, but the humble way of always going to their opponent and embracing and recognizing it for the fight. It's such a noble demonstration of what a boxer is.
Absolutely. And I think other than boxing and baseball is the American sport, period. If we're thinking about sports and athletes and greatness, when you think great sports, you say definitely baseball and boxing.
Yeah, baseball is the king of sports.
Absolutely.
When people say, "Oh, baseball, you don't need to be in shape, you don't run, you don't do anything," they don't know anything.
Right.
You have to be in top shape physically and mentally.
Yes.
You not lose a second. And it's marveling to see how a fielder, at the same precise moment where the ball is hit, the fielder knows where the ball is going to go.
Right.
Whether you're in first place, third base, in the center field, anywhere you are, you know where the ball is going. The reaction is immediate, and it's such an incredible precision that you need in baseball.
Absolutely. So going back to the 100 years of boxing, I did a little research myself, and as early as the 1900s took us all the way back to John Arthur Johnson, better known as Jack Johnson, the Galveston Giant, if you will. Jack Johnson, a lot of people don't know the history of Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was very popular at that time. He was the African-American hero for his people, and what all he stood for back in that era, because, segregation hadn't come to play yet, and there was whites and there was blacks. And so he went through some real struggles and hard times. Jack Johnson's His first payday was $1.50. He made $25 in a 4-rounder when he first fought a pro named Bob Thompson. But he made a lot of money as a pro. Jack Johnson, he very successful, had a business, the Black and Tan restaurant back in the 20s, then was ran by his white Caucasian wife, which many did not like back in that era. And then the government came after him with what they call the Mann Act, M-A-N-N, the Mann Act. And they got him for illegally transporting white women across state lines and sentenced him to prison, which he fled the country at that time and fought over in Europe for 7 years. Then he came back and went to Fort Leavenworth and done his time. So the 1900s was crazy, man, in the 20s, and the Great Recession, the James Braddock area, Jack Dempsey. A lot of people don't even know Jack Dempsey was not born Jack Dempsey. His name is William Harrison Dempsey, and he got that name. He's born in Manassas, Colorado, but called him the Manassas Mauler. And then he came up with the name of Kid Blackie after some work bully threw dirt in his face at a silver mining town he was in. And they say he destroyed this guy. He couldn't work and do anything anymore. But the way he came to become Jack Dempsey, his brick brother Bernie was a heavyweight fighter. He had a fight scheduled in Cripple Creek, Colorado. He knew he couldn't win it, so he pulled out. His little brother William took the fight, won it easily, and then told Bernie, "I'm now Jack Johnson. I mean, Jack Dempsey." And that's how he became Jack Dempsey. I never knew that. And also Jack Dempsey drew the first $1 million gate ever when he fought the Frenchman for the title, Georges Carpentier. 91,000 spectators. When they tallied up the receipts, Mauricio, $1.7 million.
That was the first $1 million gate.
Yes.
That's precisely 100 years from now. Yeah. That's one of the celebrations that we're doing this year. And all these moments that put boxing, today's boxing, what it is, it's because of the things that happened in the past.
In the past. They open a lot of doors for the fighters the fighters have it so well now. And in my opinion, I think a lot of them are so spoiled now with the way the purses are set up for them now. You know, it's like a realtor's market now. It's a seller's market, and fighters know right now it's a fighter's market, and I want my worth.
You know, it's a different world. It's a social media world, and there are many differences from what it was and what it is today. Many things are good, many things are better, and there's always that romantic nostalgia about the past. But we're going through a great moment in the sport.
Absolutely, you know, and it keeps going in the 30s and the 40s. The 30s, 40s, and 50s, everyone thought that a lot of fighters had mob ties. Sonny Liston, racketeering. Did you know that JFK approached Floyd Patterson and said, "Hey, you can't fight Sonny Liston. This is bad for business. This is bad for the American people with his ties to the racketeering." And come to find out, at the time, Floyd Patterson's manager was Cus D'Amato, whose license got stripped as his manager because of the mob ties they said Cus D'Amato had. I never knew all of this was going on. You know, back then I was born in '62. So when I'm doing this history piece for you, I'm like, I wonder if Mauricio knew a lot of these things when we was growing up. Well, you know, neither one of us are that old, but to go back 100 years, we're going back.
You know, there's always stories, and there's always assumptions. My father always told me when there was a dispute, it's this side of the story, it's the other side of the story, and then there's the truth. So you can always dream and familiarize with stories that happen, but it would not be fair to get stuck. Boxing is suffering still today from those 30s, 40s, 50s labeling of our sport being with the mob.
Yeah.
The boxing never was able to recover from that situation. Still today, boxing is in the United States is regulated by the Muhammad Ali Act. It's a federal law.
Absolutely.
MMA, UFC, any other, they do not have to go through the Muhammad Ali Act. So it's a very complicated scenario for the promoters and for those who are in the sport, because they have to carry that burden. But that's how it is, and we have to continue doing our best.
Absolutely. Thank God for the Muhammad Ali Act, because it keeps us walking the straight and narrow, if you will, and that's the blueprint that everyone must follow, because there's a conflict of interest where managers want to be promoters and promoters want to be managers. You can't.
Yeah, but in MMA, everybody in MMA, the UFC is manager, promoter, TV network. It's everything in the same.
Wow.
So, and it works very well for the UFC. They don't have to go through that underlining process, but it's a different. That's why people, when they compare the sport of boxing with others, they do not go in depth understanding the difference between what happens in one sport and one in the other.
Absolutely. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit real quick. Let's talk about the Brown Bomber Joe Louis when he fought Max Schmeling, and Max stopped him in the 12th round, and that just broke Joe Louis's heart, because he felt like he failed his people, the African American. He was definitely the hero of the people since Jack Johnson's era, and he was humiliated by this German. But a lot of people don't know Max Schmeling was a really good guy. He wasn't at all associated with the Hitler and the Nazi regime, if you will. He just happened to be German. But when that happened, and Joe Louis ended up fighting James Braddock for the heavyweight title, which Max Schmeling wanted that fight, but politics stopped that. And then Joe's people was like, "Hey, Joe, you're the heavyweight champ of the world now." And he was like, "I'm not the champ until I beat Max."
Yeah.
So,
and what a way to come back and knock him out in one round.
In the first round.
Yes.
And that was the end of that. But they became like a brotherhood, because Max Schmeling, if you remember, had got a very interesting offer with Coca-Cola. And he became a businessman and got his money back, because during the World War II, he lost everything as well.
Everything.
And then he found Joe Louis. He flew all the way to Chicago, found the bar and the little club that Joe Louis hung out in, walks in, talks to Joe, and everybody's looking like, "Wow, that's Max Schmeling. What the hell?" And Max said, "Hey, Joe, I think I could bring you on board with Coca-Cola," because Joe was having some hard times with his finances. So Max looked him up to come and try to pull him out of the hole. Ain't that something?
Wow.
All the way from Germany.
He was a very nice. There are many stories like that,
Yeah.
Duran, he went to see Esteban de Jesus in his deathbed. When Azuma Nelson and Wilfredo Gomez, many come to Mexico to visit Salvador Sanchez's grave. There's a great brotherhood in boxing. Once you fight and that bell ends the fight, there's something that just brings them into a different level of friendship and recognition, and that's why I love boxing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, like you said, we have so many fights like that. Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales, Alexis Arguello and the Hawk. Those guys end up loving one another like family.
Gatti Ward.
Yeah. Then you got the 60s come around. Sonny Liston knocks out Floyd Patterson in the first round. Then this other guy, in 64, what you got Muhammad Ali, known as Cassius Clay, forces Sonny Liston to stay on the stool, can't answer the 7th round, and comes back in 65 of May with the infamous right hand that everybody said didn't touch him, and knocks Liston out in the first round in the rematch. So, I mean, we got some great history here. Then the 70s come around. Smoking Joe Frazier, Ali gets stripped. 66, he gets the letter to answer the draft. 67, hey, he shows up. He doesn't answer by name. They strip his title. They suspend his license. He can't earn for 3.5 years. Joe Frazier shows up and say, "Hey, here's another story." Joe Frazier shows up, gives him some money for him and his family.
That's incredible.
And that's something else. I mean, and all the things. What do you think really the animosity was all about? Because it seemed like Smoking Joe was like a a gentleman and a scholar of the sport at the time to want to help Ali and then give him a shot at the title. And then Ali just kept bashing him, with the name calling, the Uncle Tom and the Gorilla and things of this era, you know what I mean? So what do you think that whole animosity was? That just marketing on Ali, or
Muhammad Ali was unique, and he had the gift of attracting all the attention. And Frazier was very jealous of that because Frazier was the world champion.
Yes.
Ali was not, because he did not fight in 3.5 years.
Right.
But he would walk around the street and every interview calling himself the world champion. And Frazier was obsessed with that, not being able to handle the differences in press, in coverage. And when he defeated Ali, March 8th, 71, that was the greatest night for him in his life. That proved the value of Joe Frazier. And he retired then. Everything would have been. Look at that. Is that an original program or what?
This is on 10. I got so many collectibles, Mauricio. Yeah, that's the actual poster and everything.
That's a great piece.
And then the 70s was so good, man. And then the 80s. Do you feel like? I feel like I've talked to so many people that the 80s was the greatest boxing era ever. These guys only wanted to fight the best of the best. There wasn't no, well, you talk to your people, I talk to my people. We talked as boxers. We got that fight done for the fans. The Sugar Ray Leonards, the Durans, the Tommy Hearns, the list goes on. Alexis Aguayo, the Hawk, but Wilfred Benitez. People say the 80s was the best era, and that all the young fighters today should probably go through and watch that whole 80s era. What was your favorite era?
Well, of course, I grew up 70s and 80s.
Me too.
Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, Benitez, those 5. Pipino Cuevas, make it 6. Tyson, Chavez, Salvador Sanchez, Wilfredo Gomez. I mean, those were iconic legend champions.
Yes.
But today, look at today. I mean, you have great opportunities for great fights. If Errol Spence and Crawford get in the ring, that would be a classic. In the lightweights, there's so much great fights to be made. The heavyweights, they got something going on. So every time has a special ingredient. Yeah. And of course, we always like to look back. I look back at the Dallas Cowboys.
Tom Landry era, huh?
Tom Landry and Staubach. There's always a tendency to compare with the past, with the good old times.
Yes.
But those are the things that build the present and the future. So that's why we're celebrating every single aspect that we can during 2021, the year of boxing, to recognize all those persons, all those events which shaped what we live today in this great sport of boxing.
Absolutely. And then we go to the end of the 80s. We got the youngest heavyweight in the world ever at 20 years old, Iron Mike Tyson, 1986, knocks out Trevor Berbick in 2 rounds. Until Floyd Patterson, he was the youngest at 21 when he knocked out Archie Moore. So then this young kid named Iron Mike from Catskill, 20 years old, all this money. He carried the torch in the 90s. We had Evander Holyfield. You got Oscar De La Hoya now, Roy Jones Jr. in that mix, Sweet Pea Whitaker. Man, we're talking about some really good legends up until the now fighters. You know what I mean? So I wonder if any of those guys have ever like gone in the library and just watched.
That's something that many fighters like to do. Mike Tyson, he could name any fighter from boxing. He loved watching the tapes, the old tapes of fights. He loved Mantequilla Nápoles and many others. Floyd Mayweather, he studies boxing very well.
Yeah.
So it's just a brilliant sport. It's you cannot generate the drama that happens in this sport in any way.
Absolutely. Montel Griffin is another one. He's a walking boxing almanac, this guy. And if anything you want to know about Ali, he can tell you because he was side by side with him.
Really, the Mungus?
At Deer Lake. Montel grew up literally as a child next to Muhammad Ali for every training camp just about, because his dad, the late, great Clarence Griffin, was really, really good friends at the old Johnny Coulon boxing gym on the south side of Chicago where I fought, and it was called Windy City Boxing Gym.
Oh.
And Clarence Griffin and Muhammad Ali, that's where Ali trained when he was in Chicago, because, you know, he lived in Hyde Park.
Yes.
Another little community in Chicago. So, yeah, this guy has a boxing almanac. When you talk about Floyd Mayweather and these guys who can actually quote all kind of stats and tell you that era to be so young, you like. So, I mean, and in the 2000s, and here we are now, and, you know, we got some really good fights. Like you said, the Spence and Bud Crawford fight, that probably would make as big a fight as Duran Leonard 1 and 2 and Hearns Leonard 1 and 2. Be a hell of a fight.
They have to understand that there's a need for them to get into the ring, and hopefully they will.
They have to. It's what the fans want. The fans demand it. I think boxing demands it.
Yes.
It has to happen. It has to happen. There can only be one of the great. They got to be, one of them can only be the best.
Yes, of course.
So now let's go into the main topic, which is the 50-year anniversary of Ali Frazier, March 8th, 1971, sold out event, epic, Madison Square Garden, hottest ticket in town, you know, 50 countries, 12 languages, and 300 million something fans, Mauricio. And Blue Eyes, Mr. New York himself, Frank Sinatra, couldn't even get a ticket. He had to get a photographer's credential and take pictures ringside for Time magazine. What can you say about this fight, man? All the buildup that Ali did for this fight and Frazier, oh my God.
Well, it is the greatest sporting event in the history of the world. Just what the stories that people tell about this night, what happened during the fight week. The fight was on a Monday, and
yeah,
it was electric. And what happened after that is that boxing was born. Boxing became a mainstream. It was welcome to the majors for the sport of boxing after that fight, which happened in Madison Square Garden, New York City.
And Joe Parencio was the promoter at the time. I forgot who they said the matchmaker was for that event, but what a moment. I wonder if either one of them thought back then, after those years had passed in the 80s and the 90s, long before, you know, they passed away, did they ever think that one fight, that one night on that date and time would ever carry this much greatness for the sport?
No, I mean, it's destiny. There was so much at stake. There was so much hatred towards Ali for not going to war. But then things started to shape and turn around after those 3.5 years. Yeah. People started realizing that war was not correct. So people started empathizing with Ali.
Yeah.
And things started leveling up. And by fight time,
he was a hero.
After the fight, he was a hero.
Superhero. I mean, the fact that he stood up against our strongest government ever, the United States government, and told the government, no, I will not answer to the draft and go over and kill people of color that ain't never called me the N-word.
That's powerful.
That is one man, you know, one man, and he stood by his words. People don't understand the history of Ali. He was so much more than a boxer out of that ring. You know, he stood for so much more, and so many people looked up to him and needed him. You know, the country needed him. The sport of boxing needed him.
Yeah, and he carried, you know, when he passed away, it was like a rebirth, because all those who never saw him or heard of him, like my children and their friends, when he passed away, everything came back. and the so many moments in which he inspired came back alive, and now he will be for eternity regarded as the greatest of them all.
Ever. That is definitely why he is called the GOAT. I saw him up close in person at Sugar Shane Mosley Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight, MGM Las Vegas. He was at the Kraft Steakhouse afterwards. And I saw him inside of his own little private partition room there. Definitely a legend. We'll never forget him. Got some more stuff I want to share with you real quick. Look at that. Robertson pants.
Where you get all these things?
Man, I search them on eBay and wherever. He go to the Clay listing.
Wow, nice.
And here go one last but not least. The Brown Bomber.
Ooh. He was such an unbelievable fighter, Joe Louis.
Yes. Who
is your favorite fighter of all time? Yourself?
I would probably say Muhammad Ali, but I was in my era growing up because I boxed and for the Army and for in Chicago for Montel Griffin's dad, and I fell in love with Sugar Ray Leonard, man. The style of fight that he brought in the ring, and the energy and the speed, and it was just like he was flawless in there, man. His jab, everything about him, he had the whole package. I was just mesmerized to watch Sugar Ray Leonard, man.
Yeah, Sugar Ray. I grew up having him as my hero, and last night I was watching some tapes, and I watched how he knocked out the Hawk Price in one round. I mean, that, I don't know if you've seen that knockout.
I never watched that knockout. I used to watch him on ABC Wide World of Sports when he was in the Olympics competing in '76. Man, I was like, wow, that's when I knew.
That's your homework. Go and watch in YouTube Leonard versus Price. Oh my God, what a knockout.
I will definitely do that, because and when I talked to Ray today, Ray is really laid back. He's an awesome dude to talk to, man. He's really cool, and he'll talk to you all day long. He loves boxing. He loves it.
He's such a nice, my favorite. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely a gentleman and a scholar of the sport, man. And this whole thing with the whole Ali and the 50-year anniversary, man, what a big to-do thing. I mean, I watched the replay on ABC this past weekend. Yes. ESPN played it again. I recorded it. I was like, wow. I was 9 years old, March 8th, 1971.
You know, we were going to do a grand event in New York.
I know.
We started planning it 2 years ago, but it didn't happen, but it will. I am committed to do something either at the end of this year or next year to commemorate this great event. And we had great plans going to the United Nations and do many things with the New York Athletic Club, where Arthur Mercante,
he was the referee.
Yes, and he was there to prepare before going to the garden. We're gonna create a wine commemorating this event. So we have so many things, and we will be doing it. And I'm sure we will continue to enjoy and commemorate, because it's only 50 years. We got so many more to remember.
Yeah, and I was a part of that Zoom call with Madison Square Garden. Brought me on as part of the media. Jerry Cooney, Larry Holmes, Bernard Hopkins, Steve Farhood was the narrator, and Bob Arum. Bob Arum said he's doing a big bash in June 12th. He's doing a bash June 12th at MSG in honor of the 50-year anniversary. So that may be something. Maybe the WBC can tie right in and just do one big thing together. I don't know if the WBC is going to do something solely, because you got a whole different theme that you want to go off of. But that was Bob's words at the end of that Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Bob and see what he has planned.
Yeah, June 12th is the date. I say we go in there, black tie, tucked out, and everything.
Absolutely.
Hey, the only way. Man, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. I think this was a real a real good thing to talk about 100 years of boxing, share some of the legends. Didn't get into everybody, the Archie Moores, Henry Armstrongs, Ezra Charles. We could go on and on and on. If we did it, we'd be on here all day.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you, man.
Thank you so very much. And I share your passion. I share your enthusiasm. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the very near future.
Absolutely. Same here. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you, your gentleman and scholar. WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman was on the show today as our guest here. I'm Rick Mohammed, Brawlers Sports Media in the building. This is the Brawlers Sports Boxing Show. My associates, 3kingsboxing.com, Studio 9. Till next time, Mr. Mauricio, thank you so much. God bless you, brother. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. God bless.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Throughout his history on the planet Earth, man has always been in conflict. At conflict with his new environment, his surroundings, his neighbor, even himself. One of the first methods of conflict was hand-to-hand combat, like boxing.
With that being said, Frazier came to his rescue during that time that he was out not making any money and gave him money to help keep his family going and keep him operating and keep food on the table. And
Brawlers, baby.